What is going on, everyone? So in this week's video, I want to talk a little bit about patience. And so I'm going to take you back to 2007, which was one of the first times I visited Zine. It wasn't the first, it was one of the first, because I actually went on a family camping trip in the kind of late 80s to Zine, which is the first time there. But 2007, my then girlfriend, now wife, and I went to Zine in this big trip throughout the Southwest. And so we visited Zion, Bryce, all these other parks and areas out there as well. So it was the first time in my adult life that I had visited Zine. And right near the entrance at that point in time was this photography gallery. And it was from a photographer by the name of Michael Fatali that some of you might recognize the name, some of you might not. But he had this really impressive gallery right near the entrance with these really large prints. They were really nicely framed, they were nicely lit, and you can just see them as you're driving by. And at one point we wandered in there, and I was not very familiar with large format at the time. I wasn't yet working with large format. That would come about a year later. But seeing those prints and seeing the details and seeing these moments that he managed to capture, it was very impressive. It was definitely something that inspired me to go down that route. And in reading about Michael Fatali, there was something that came up at some point where they're talking about how he would go to some of these canyons and in some case wait hours and hours for the wind to settle before exposing a single sheet of film and revisiting scenes and all this sort of stuff that at that point in time and where I was as a photographer in that point in time, it just seemed incredibly foreign, and it seemed like a very difficult way to go about photography. Now, if we fast forward to what I do now, that's basically what I do. Going to some of these canyons again and again on a yearly basis. In some cases setting up and just waiting, in some cases hours for the breeze to settle before taking that sheet of film. A place like Death Valley, setting up a composition at 2 o'clock in the afternoon for a photo that I'll probably take at 6 o'clock. And what I've learned through the years is that that is actually the easier way to take photos, even though it seemed like it was the more difficult way. And so I think there's some lessons in life in that, because going back to that trip in 2007, that was before social media. And there was already a relatively short attention span that people had back then, but now with TikTok, Instagram, everything else, it has trained us to have an even shorter attention span. So I imagine that some of you that are watching this, having that degree of patience might seem even more foreign now to you than it did to me back in 2007. But I've learned a lot since then. I've learned that not only does having that sense of patience make the process easier, it's also, there's less stress involved too, which is another side benefit to it. Because when you're less stressed, when you're doing something that you enjoy, that time really seems to go by so much faster. And this is especially important for scenes like, for example, like in Death Valley, where I mentioned setting up a particular subject at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and then waiting for sunset. As the light changes very quickly, and I'm trying to make decisions about metering and everything else along those lines, with that composition already set, it's a more Zen-like experience than if I'm running around and trying to figure out what to photograph at the last moment. So that sense of patience really does lead to a more calm feeling, less stress, a more enjoyable experience. And so just as a little bit of insight to some of you, to foster that sense of patience, because I think it does make it so much more of a rewarding experience. It's not the more difficult way to do things. It actually is the easier way to do things. But I want to thank everyone for watching, and we'll see you around next time.